G'day guys, this is Andrew Price here from BlenderGuru.com and welcome to another video tutorial. In this video, I'm going to be showing you how to create a classic Chrome logo. Now, if you're a freelancer or somebody that, takes on clients and things like that, there's a good chance that you're probably going to come across somebody who wants this exact thing done. Chrome logos, there's something about it that's attractive to business owners. It looks fancy, it looks nice and new, and they want their logo to have that kind of freshness appeal. So that's why you'll probably get this request a lot. So hence why I'm doing a tutorial on it. Now, the actual scene itself is really easily put together. Probably the hardest and most time-consuming part is actually modeling your logo. So depending on how complex it is, that's really going to depend on how quickly you can finish this tutorial. The lighting is really basic. You've got a basic backdrop there and a little bit of fancy stuff which are going to give us some reflections as well. So those are a few things we're going to be covering in this tutorial, and as well as that, I'm also going to be showing you how to do some basic camera animation. So if this was to be a title, intro or something like that, we're gonna get into a little bit of that as well. Really easy, keeping it simple, guys. If you're a beginner, you should have no problem following this tutorial. So with that in mind, let's go ahead now and open up a new scene in Blender. Now, for this tutorial, you're welcome to use whatever logo you like. You don't have to use my Blender Guru logo if you don't want to. I imagine you probably wouldn't want to. But yeah, for the sake of the video, I'm going to use my logo. So the first thing I'm going to do is load in a picture of my finished logo. So I'm hoping you guys at least have a finished logo to at least reference off. Don't try and use Blender to create your own logo from scratch. It's probably not a good idea. Now, once you've got the logo in the background there, what we're going to do is we're going to add a plane, okay? Now, with this plane here, I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees, like so, so that looking at it from front on, you've got the plane flat, like this, okay? So what I'm going to do is, just to try and keep the modeling really clean, is I'm going to keep the logo completely two-dimensional for now, okay? So just imagine that there's not a third dimension or anything like that. We're just simply going to be tracing around each of these letters here. So I'm going to grab these vertices here and I'm going to extrude and then stop. And then I'm going to extrude again and then stop. So this is essentially the method that we're going to be doing to form the entire logo. Now, it's as I said, it's a little bit time-consuming. Probably the most time-consuming thing of this tutorial, depending on how complex your logo is. So I'm not going to walk you through the entire creation of this logo because I think that'd be a bit tedious. I'm just going to stop at the B. One thing to note, as you're modeling your logo, it's probably a good idea to keep in mind the topology now rather than later. And by topology, I mean, the arrangement of the vertices. When I was first doing the logo, I used way too many vertices, and as a result, when I finished it and I tried to, get those nice chrome reflections, there were these really noticeable artifacts, and it just looked nasty. So, and there really was no way to fix that other than to start again, as I soon realized. So, yeah, it's important to try and keep it clean. Try and use as few vertices as you can get away with. And yeah, it'll work out a lot better. So another thing to note is if you try and, to get the topology working right, try and imagine it as, if you were to try and paint this logo, like draw it with a pencil, where would you start and then where would you end? So for this letter B here, obviously you'd start the pencil there, draw it round, and then up. So that's why I've drawn it in that fashion. So this area here, the vertices are pushing it that way. It's very important to sort that out. Anyway, okay, so we've got just a basic outline of that letter B. As you can see, it's a little low res, but that's not going to matter because we're going to use a subsurf modifier. So go ahead and add that. Whoop, subsurf modifier. Okay, just move this around a little bit. And actually, while I'm at it, I might as well go ahead and save this before Blender crashes, as it did just before when I was using it. Okay, so it's the subsurf modifier has made it look a little bit blobby and a little bit ridiculous, but that's not going to matter in a few steps. Once you've added the subsurf modifier, go ahead now and add a solidify modifier. Okay, now if you've never used a solidify modifier before, we're going to place it above the subsurf modifier, okay? So it's at the top. The solidify modifier allows you to add a third dimension to a two-dimensional object. Okay, if that's confusing, this plane is two-dimensional, okay? It's completely flat. If you look at it top down, there's no other dimension to it. What a solidify modifier will do is allow you to add depth to that object whilst still keeping just these basic vertices here. So it's a really neat and easy way because it allows you to, if I wanted to change anything about this logo, I can easily do it without having to worry about the vertices in the background, that extra depth or anything like that. It's just a really nice way of keeping things clean and easy to edit later. I'm also going to turn on smooth shading, so do that. Now, if you're noticing you're wondering why it's looking all blobby and ridiculous now, we're going to fix that. We're going to add a bevel modifier, and we're going to place the bevel modifier between the solidify modifier and the subsurf modifier. And now we're going to, actually I'll just explain, if you've never used the bevel modifier before, if we zoom in here, I just set that to flat. The bevel modifier adds an edge to it, so you don't get that sharp cut edge. It's useful for things like interior modeling and things like that, just getting things looking a lot more nicer. By adding a bevel modifier and then placing it above a subsurf modifier, what you get is some nice sort of smoothed off edges. Now currently it's placing a bevel modifier on every vertex. We don't want that. I'm going to make it apply to angles, and I'm going to set the angle amount to 89. Okay, and you can see straight away how quickly and nicer our logo looks there. So what that's done, using the angle, by the way, if you were to change that angle to 90, you can see that it's now placed a bevel object over everything. So setting it to 89 ensures that there's a bevel in all the right places along these edges here, but where there's the actual 90-degree angle there, it doesn't place anything around that. So that's essentially what I'm trying to get at. Okay. I'm going to just tighten up this edge here by adding a loop cut. You can do that by hitting Control R. And I'm just going to tighten a few of these up as well. Another loop cut there and another loop cut there. Okay, so that's essentially the letter B. And next week on Sesame Street. No. So as I said, I'm not going to show you how to do the entire logo. That's going to be too boring. Let's jump now to the finished, completed modeled logo. Okay, there we go. So we've got now the finished logo. It's completely finished modeling now. One thing to note is I've turned the solidify thickness to a 0.5. You can vary that, however thickness you want, but I found a 0.5 works pretty well for the scene. Okay, so now we've got it modeled, we can get into the rest of the scene. Now to create that nice sort of chrome look, we're going to be making this text here 100% reflective. So I'm going to add a material now. I'm going to turn on mirror and turn the reflectivity all the way up to 1. And I'm going to set the specularity to a 0.1. And let's position the camera front on as well. We can remove the background image as well. Okay, I'm just going to position the camera here. Okay, so now that this material is completely 100% reflective, if you won't actually be able to light it with anything. The only thing that the lamps will be able to do from this stage is to provide specular highlights. Okay, so we're going to add a bit of lighting later on, but that's purely for specularity. So one thing to sort of keep in mind as you're doing this is that for how this text here appears relies entirely on the reflections, that sort of the objects that it can reflect. Okay, so I'm going to create now a plane, and I'm creating it behind the camera like so. I'm going to scale it outwards like that. I'm going to rotate it by 90 degrees, and I'm going to position it about there. Okay, now you can probably guess what I'm going to do now. I'm going to give it a new material, turn the specularity down, and I'm going to give it an emit value. Okay, so we've now got an object, no specularity, it's white colored, and it's giving a 0.9 emit value. So if I was to render this right now, if I've done everything right, then we should have this result, which isn't too bad considering. Now, to give it, currently it's looking very, very nice, very cut looking sort of mirrored effect, I want to go for a more softer type chrome look. So I'm going to get the material here, and I'm going to turn the gloss amount to a 0.95. Now that's only turning it down a little bit, but that's going to give us more softer looking reflections. Now when you do that, you do need to turn the samples up as well. I don't know why the default value is 18. 18 always looks horrible. I'm going to go ahead and turn that up to 200. And just for later on when we add the backdrop, which is also going to be reflective as well, it helps if you turn the depth up to 6, just so you can get a few more bouncing reflections off other things like that. Okay, so now rendered with that sort of nicer, more softer looking reflections, you get this result. Now it's a matter of, I suppose, playing around with you know, the position of the camera, 2, how big, and the position of this reflective thing. So one thing I want to do is I want to position the camera so that it's just below the actual, below the actual logo, and it's looking up like that. Now the reason for that is that a camera positioned underneath something, below something, the object looks more dominant. So that's, you know, important for companies. You know, they want their logo to appear strong and dominant. So it just helps, you know, position the camera so it's beneath it. Just a little tip for you. Okay, now let's have a look now. The reflection will have changed slightly because the camera's moved. But that's pretty good, I think. It's not bad. Okay, now one other thing I want to do is I want to create a more solid reflection. So, you know, this is giving a nice sort of gradient effect over the text, but I want to give it sort of like a more harsher line across there. So what I'm going to do is take this reflective rectangle, not reflective, emitting rectangle, duplicate it, scale it down, making sure it's in front of the other one, and give it a new material, clicking that little button there, very important, and I'm going to set the emit value to 3. So we've now got a solid white bar there, which is a lot more reflective than the other one, and that should give us a little bit more, you know, you can see here where that bar is, you know, showing through, and I found that just sort of gives a more nicer looking result. You could perhaps turn down the emit value of the one behind it. That might help a little bit. Yeah, it's looking pretty good. Again, it just takes a little bit of fiddling around to get it right, but I think that's looking pretty good. I might turn down the emit value just one more notch, but that's not bad. Okay, now for the background, it's entirely up to you. If you want to use a completely solid black background, you're welcome to do that if that's sort of the effect you want to go for. I'm going to use sort of my company colors, which are, if you look in the main header of my website right now, you'll see you've got this kind of navy blue, slightly aqua type color. So that's the color I'm going to go for. Let's render that, see how that looks. Pretty good, not bad. Okay. Now, as I explained before, you know, the lamps that we're going to add right now, these are only going to be providing specularity, so sort of some, you know, bounced sort of glinting lights and things like that. And all it's going to be really doing is just catching that beveled edge there. It's not actually going to be adding any specularity to the front part of it. That's all done entirely with reflections. So with the lamp here selected, I'm going to turn it into an area lamp. I'm going to make the distance 10. And the size set to 7. Okay, I'm going to rotate it around like that, and just so that it doesn't light anything accidentally if we forget something later on, I'm going to turn off diffuse. So that means it won't actually provide any physical light to any object in the scene. It will only create faked specularity reflections. So it's pretty useless lamp really, but you know, it does the job for, you know, this purpose. I'm also going to turn the energy of that up to 5. I'm going to move it over here, just duplicate it, create another one, and I'm going to make the energy for that set to 3. And I'm also going to give it a slightly bluish color for both of them. Oh. Slightly blue, like so. Alright, now just for ease of use, I'm going to select everything and then just move it above that grid there, like so. And if you hit Shift C, the cursor will now snap to that location. And now I'm going to add a plane. So this plane is going to be, yeah, basically the backdrop. It's going to be 100% reflective as well. So let's go ahead and set up that material. No specularity, 100% reflection, and I'm also going to give it soft shadow, soft reflections as well. Again, I'm going to set the samples up to 300 just so it's a little bit nicer, and also change the depth to 8, because what we're going to do next is I'm going to give it, just to make it look like it continues on forever, I'm going to take these two vertices here, I'm going to extrude them, make them go at a sort of a 45-degree angle, and then extrude that up again. Now if I hit Control 2, that'll add a subsurf modifier, turn on smooth shading, create another loop cut just behind the logo so that, you know, this slope effect doesn't overcome the logo, so to speak. Alright, and make sure it covers the entire sort of space of the camera just by scaling it and extruding it along the x-axis like so. And what that allows you to do is to have an infinite backdrop, one that you can't see the end of. So let's render that now, and let's see how it looks. So we've added those specularity lamps, we've given it a backdrop, and it should now be looking pretty good. You can see the tops of the logo there, where we've got that specularity. You can now actually see it, so that's really important. Before it was sort of fading off into the background there, so it's important you get that specularity lamp effect. And that's pretty good. The only thing I'm going to change is right here. You can see that the reflection is quite sort of, how do you say, pronounced, quite in your face. That's a really weird way of explaining things, but I just want to make it a little bit more opaque, okay, so that it's not too demanding too much attention. So going into the material settings here, underneath mirror, I'm going to give it a max distance. Okay, I'm going to try a max distance of 5 and see how that looks. And what that'll do is it'll create reflections up to 5 units away from the camera, and then it will fade into the sky, which is important because the sky is going to be this color. So it should, if I render this now, the reflection should look like it's faded off as it gets more towards the camera. Now you can see only a little bit of reflection there, so I've made that a little bit too... if you want, by the way, you can select the camera, turn on limits, and then sort of change this distance, and you'll see just how far away the camera is to the object. So that's a distance of around about 9 there. So if I change this to 10, then that should look now pretty good, I think. Alright, again, it's looking a little bit too opaque, so let's set that to 15, and hopefully, fingers crossed, it should look pretty good now. Yep, there we go. So that's looking pretty good. Alright, I'm going to let that... Yeah, that's fine. I might just move the logo now just so it's just touching the actual surface of it, like so. Okay. Now the other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to give the scene a little bit of depth of field. So, you know, you can change this distance here, but we're going to add some camera animation later. So I want to make sure the depth of field is always correct. So this object here is called text. So I can now, with the camera selected, set the depth of field to text. So it will now focus on the text. Okay, pretty straightforward. And the other thing I'm going to do, just to make it easier later on, is I'm going to call this render layer scene. Going to make it affect the first layer, and I'm going to move the text to a second layer, like so, to layer number 2, and I'm going to create another render layer, and this is going to say text. Okay. Now also with the scene, I want to make it actually render both layers together. Now the reason for that is the whole scene is going to have, you know, the text and the backdrop, but this render layer here will allow us to add, you know, some glow effects and things like that, only specific to the text. So another thing that's important is to turn off sky. This will make sense later in a second. So it's just yeah, saving a bit of time. So now that's set up, I'm also just going to change the dimensions here just to 720p, and let's go ahead and give it a nice render. Okay, cool. So we can now jump into the compositor. So here we're going to be adding those nice sort of glows and those glinting lights and things like that. That's really going to give it that nice polished chrome look. Okay, so this is the you know, the main scene that we've rendered there. Now I'm going to duplicate this render layer and then change the layer to text. And then this is what the text looks like. So first thing I'm going to do is, with this text selected here, I'm going to give it a blur node, set it to fast Gaussian, and change the X and Y to 20. So that'll give it a nice sort of soft looking glow like that. I'm now going to add a mix node, combine it with the original render layer here. Just create a viewer node there so we can see it. And I'm going to set the type to add. And let's see how that looks. Okay, so it's a little bit over the top at the moment. Go ahead and turn that down to a 0.3 or 0.2, whatever you want to use. Maybe set this glow amount to 10. That might be a little bit better, I think. Yeah, it looks a bit nicer. You can also set that maybe to screen as well. If you might get a bit of weird overlapping artifacts if you don't. I don't properly understand that myself, but there you go. Okay, cool. Now to get that nice sort of glinting light reflections, this is an optional step, by the way, but you know, to get that, yeah, glinting light reflections, go to the main scene here and then turn on specular. Okay, now you can see here that it's given us that little output there for specularity, and that'll allow us to apply some effects only to the specularity, nothing else. One thing to note though is once you've checked specularity, you do need to re-render it, so let's do that now. Okay, and now let's have a look at that specularity channel, and you can see you've got that effect there, which is nice. So that's just 100% specularity. I'm now going to add a glare node. So a glare node is going to allow us to, you know, add some nice sort of star-looking glow effects and things like that. You can't see any difference there. What I need to do is turn the threshold down to something appropriate, maybe about a 0.05. And what that's going to do, if I set that to, yeah, if I set the mix amount to 1, you can see what it's doing. So the lower you set that threshold, the more those glinting lights are going to be showing through. It's essentially like adding an RGB curve and then making it, you know, only affect the really highlighted parts of things. So you can do that if you wanted to, or just use that threshold amount. But that looks pretty good, I think, for what we want. Maybe set that to 0.5. Okay. Yeah, no, I'm going to set it to a 0.03. Can't make up my mind. There we go. Alright, okay, so you can turn the streaks up as well. It's entirely up to you what number you use, but I'm going to use about a level 9. You can also change the fade amount. That's the length of those streaks. Now once you've got the streaks the way you want, just duplicate that, that screen node there, and then place the glare over the top of it, and we should now have that effect there. So you can see, if we zoom in there, in the background, you've got some nice sort of star effects showing through. So that's really nice. You can also turn up the FAC amount. If you place the glare underneath that node there, you can change the amount that it's showing through by that value there. But I think 2 should look pretty good. Alright, I'm just gonna... Oh. By the way, if you want to know the shortcut for that, to zoom in and out, it's Alt-V and then V to zoom back out again. Just a little tip for you. Okay, so that is looking pretty good. If you want, you can add some defocus. I mean, we set up the camera, so we might as well go ahead with it. So I'm doing that now. Set use Z buffer, and I'll set the f-stop to 20. Okay, so that's, yeah, it's not doing much really. Ah, and also you gotta put in the Z amount there. Okay, like so, maybe 5. What effect does that have? Can't really see much of an effect. Alright, pretty good. Alright, so now all that's left is to, yeah, go ahead and plug that value. Whoa, what's happened there? Let's have a look. Whoa! Well, that's pretty crazy. Let's have a look. Find this problem. Yes, the glare node is supposed to be using the specularity channel. So change that. And that should fix most things. There we go. And I'm going to make this defocus plug into there instead of using the main one. So now, provided that all checks out, there you have it. So that's the finished result. You know, if you want, you can end the tutorial here. I'm gonna go now into a little bit of camera animation, really basic. You know, like I said, if you're wanting just a static image, you can end the tutorial here. But for the sake of, you know, people wanting to do an animation, I'm just gonna really quickly cover how to do that. So for the for this example, I'm going to set the total length of this animation to 90 frames, which is around about 4 seconds roughly, just a little bit less. I'm going to jump to the end frame, and I'm going to make this. I'm going to put a keyframe right here. Now, basically the animation I want to go for is sort of have the camera start at the top and then end down there. So the camera's looking directly above the text, and then as it goes down, it picks up the reflections from this, and then you see that nice logo effect there. So that's the end sort of goal in mind. So now, with the end frame, we've added a keyframe there for the location of the camera. I'm now going to jump to the first frame, and I'm going to position the camera directly above it, okay? And I'm going to make a keyframe right there. So that's on frame 1, and then frame 90, it's down there. So if we were to play that back, then we would have this animation, which isn't actually what we want. We want the camera to be focused on the text the entire time. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create an empty at the same base of the text there. I'm going to grab the camera, shift select that empty, and then hit Control T, and then select track 2 constraint. So now if we play that back, the camera should be focused entirely on the text as it goes down like so. And that is pretty much it. There was one other thing that I changed, and that's if you go to the F curve like this, if you take this Z location, if you scale that that starting point out a little bit more, what it will do is it won't lower the camera so fast at the beginning, and you'll get a more rounded animation where it's not sort of zooming in suddenly and then zooming out again, which was a problem that I had. It didn't look very nice. So by scaling that out a little bit, and with this Y axis, Y whatever keyframe set the way it is, then if you scale it in a bit, it might be a little bit more obvious. But there you go. So, yeah, that's basically it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. I hope it was somewhat interesting to you guys, and I hope you can use it for any future job opportunities or freelance work or anything else you want to use it for. Have fun with it, guys. By all means, I'm interested in hearing your feedback, so please leave a comment, and thanks for watching.